In 1976, an American colonel walked through the gates of a nondescript British military base in Hereford, England, and what he saw over the next several months would fundamentally alter the course of United States Special Operations history forever. He was not there on vacation. He was not there to teach. He was there to learn, and what he brought back across the Atlantic would become the blueprint for the most elite direct action unit the United States Army has ever fielded. This is the story of how the British SAS made Delta Force rethink everything. Hi, my name is Arnold, and this is Delta Force Chronicles, America's Special Forces before Delta. To understand why Charlie Beckwith's trip to Hereford mattered so much, you first have to understand the state of American special operations in the early 1970s. And honestly, it wasn't pretty. The Vietnam War had done a number on the United States military's institutional appetite for unconventional warfare. Special forces had been politically toxic for years, associated in the public mind with covert operations, moral ambiguity, and a war the country desperately wanted to forget. Budgets were being slashed. Units were being downsized. The prevailing mindset inside the Pentagon at the time was essentially conventional warfare and conventional solutions. Big armies, big tanks, big doctrine. The problem was the world was not cooperating with that mindset. The 1970s were arguably the golden age of international terrorism. The Munich Olympics massacre in 1972 and the Entebbe hostage crisis in 1976 helped mark that era. Aircraft hijackings were becoming almost routine, and the United States military, for all its enormous conventional power, had absolutely nothing that resembled a dedicated precision counter-terrorist force capable of resolving those kinds of crises. The West Germans had GSG-9. The Israelis had Sayeret Matkal. The British, as Beckwith was about to discover, had the SAS. America, the most powerful military nation on Earth, had a gaping hole where that capability should have been. Almost nobody inside the Pentagon wanted to talk about it. Colonel Charles Beckwith, Charlie to everyone who knew him. He was not a quiet man. He had already earned a reputation as one of the most aggressive, unconventional thinkers in the U.S. Army by the time he arrived in Hereford in 1962 for his first detachment. Yes, 1962. This relationship between Beckwith and the SAS went back further than most people realize. That first detachment was part of an exchange program between the U.S. Army Special Forces and the British SAS, the kind of quiet institutional relationship between allied special operations communities that rarely makes the history books, but shapes them anyway. Beckwith went in expecting to be impressed. What he did not expect was to be humbled. The SAS, in the early 1960s, operated on a philosophy that was genuinely alien to the American military mindset of the era, where U.S. Special Forces were built around the team. The 12-man Operational Detachment Alpha, the A-Team, trained to work collectively and to train indigenous forces. The SAS was built around the individual. Every single SAS soldier was expected to be, in practical terms, a one-man intelligence gathering, direct action, survival, and evasion capability. The unit did not carry passengers. It did not accommodate mediocrity. And its selection process was deliberately designed to be so brutally difficult that the vast majority of applicants, including experienced decorated soldiers, simply did not make it through. Beckwith watched SAS troopers operate with a degree of individual initiative, technical skill, and quiet professional confidence that he had genuinely never seen before. These were not soldiers waiting to be told what to do. These were operators who could think, adapt, and execute under pressure without hand-holding from above. He later described the experience as being like a quarterback who had spent his whole career playing one system suddenly watching a completely different game being played at a completely different level. He also watched Dick Meadows, the legendary Special Forces sergeant who had been sent alongside him on that first detachment, and who would later surface in Tehran ahead of Operation Eagle Claw, absorb everything the SAS had to offer with the same quiet intensity. These two Americans were sitting in Hereford taking mental notes that would echo through decades of US military history. What the SAS taught him. So what specifically did the SAS teach Beckwith? Quite a lot, as it turns out. And each lesson was, by the standards of the American military establishment at the time, genuinely radical. The kind of radical that makes Pentagon bureaucrats deeply uncomfortable over their morning coffee. The first and most fundamental lesson was selection. The SAS did not take raw volunteers and mold them into soldiers. That is not how Hereford worked. Instead, they took already experienced, already decorated, already capable soldiers, men who had proven themselves in conventional units, and then put them through a selection process so systematically brutal that most of them did not survive it. Not literally, although the Brecon Beacons in winter will absolutely try its best. The process was designed to strip away every layer of reputation, rank, and prior achievement, and ask one simple question underneath all of it. What are you actually made of when nobody is watching and everything is going wrong? The Bergen did not care about your service record. The directing staff were not interested in your recommendations. Either you had it or you did not. Hereford pointed you back toward the front gate with no hard feelings and no second chances. The second lesson was structure. The SAS operated in small, devastatingly capable, self-sufficient elements built around individual excellence rather than sheer numbers. Every trooper was expected to carry a primary specialty and at least one secondary capability, such as demolitions, signals, combat medicine, or languages. The unit's overall strength was not measured in headcount. It was measured in the quality of each individual component. Every part of the machine had to be exceptional, because in the environments the SAS operated in, one weak link did not just underperform, it got people killed. The third lesson, and Beckwith would later describe this as perhaps the most eye-opening of all, was the culture. The SAS carried itself with a deliberate, almost studied informality that concealed an absolutely fanatical commitment to operational standards. Officers and non-commissioned officers worked alongside one another with a functional equality that was genuinely startling to American military eyes. Rank existed on paper. What mattered in Hereford was capability, full stop. What you could do, what you could endure, what you could figure out under pressure. Beckwith found the whole thing intoxicating. He was already mentally building Delta before he had even left Hereford. Building Delta in the SAS image. Getting Delta Force approved was not, to put it diplomatically, a straightforward administrative process. Beckwith spent the better part of a decade fighting for it. The U.S. Army bureaucracy in the 1970s was not naturally inclined to approve small, expensive, secretive counter-terrorist units, modeled on a British regiment that most senior generals had never heard of and were not particularly interested in hearing about. Beckwith wrote proposals. He briefed generals. He argued in meeting rooms and corridors, and, knowing Beckwith, probably in a few parking lots as well. He was told no. He was told to revise. He was told to wait. He waited. He revised. He said no right back. The man was not built for taking no for an answer, which, when you think about it, was probably exactly the right personality type for the job. When the approvals finally came through, in the wake of growing international terrorism and the embarrassing reality that the United States had no credible hostage rescue capability, Beckwith moved fast. The unit he built, formally activated on the 19th of November 1977 as 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, was unmistakably SAS in its DNA. Selection was modeled directly on SA selection. Candidates were taken to the mountains and broken down systematically. The assessment was not just physical, It was psychological, designed to reveal character under sustained stress. Beckwith famously told early selection candidates, "We do not care how good you think you are. We care how good you actually are when nobody is watching and everything hurts." The dropout rates were staggering. That was intentional. The squadron structure, the troop organization, the emphasis on individual operator capability, the relatively flat command hierarchy, and the expectation that every man could think and act independently under fire, all traced directly back to what Beckwith had absorbed at Hereford. The SAS had not just inspired Delta Force. In a very real operational sense, it had designed it. The proof was in the pudding, Eagle Claw and beyond. The first real test of whether Beckwith had built what he thought he'd built came in April of 1980 with Operation Eagle Claw, the attempted rescue of the 52 American hostages held in Tehran following the Iranian Revolution. And here is where the story gets complicated and painful and honestly instructive in ways that go beyond Delta itself. Eagle Claw failed, not because Delta was not ready. By most serious assessments, the assault element was as prepared as it could reasonably have been for what was being asked of it. It failed because of catastrophic failures in every system around Delta: the helicopter logistics, the interagency intelligence sharing, and the absence of a unified Special Operations Command capable of integrating all the moving parts of a mission that complex. 8 American servicemen died at Desert 1. The hostages remained in captivity for another 244 days. But here is what Eagle Claw actually proved underneath the tragedy of it. Beckwith had been right. The problem was not the assault force. The problem was everything that was supposed to support the assault force. And the American military, to its credit, learned from it. The intelligence support activity was created in direct response to the intelligence failures. SEAL Team 6 was stood up to address the maritime counter-terrorist gap, and the Goldwater-Nichols Act of 1986 and the creation of United States Special Operations Command were the institutional answers to the coordination failures that Eagle Claw had exposed so brutally. Every one of those responses traced its origins, in some form, back to lessons the SAS had been teaching since the 1940s. Those lessons traveled across oceans and decades. The legacy of what happened in Hereford, of one American colonel watching one British regiment operate with a standard he had never encountered before, is almost impossible to overstate. Delta Force went on to become arguably the finest direct-action counter-terrorist unit on the planet. Its operators served in Grenada, Panama, Somalia, Colombia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. They hunted Pablo Escobar. They were on the ground during Operation Gothic Serpent. They spearheaded the search for Saddam Hussein. They were, and remain, the tip of America's most classified spear. And it all began because the U.S. Army had the institutional wisdom in the 1960s and again in the 1970s to send good men to Hereford and tell them to pay attention. Charlie Beckwith paid very close attention indeed. The SAS did not just influence Delta Force, it built the template, and the template worked. If you made it this far, thank you, genuinely. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. I read every single one. Next week, we're going into something you are not going to want to miss. Until then, stay sharp.